lies was just
bullshit. What's the difference?
Wasn't lies, was
just bullshit. The proper way to say it. No lies, just bullshit. The proper way to say it. No lies, just bullshit. The proper way to say it. No lies, just bullshit. The proper way to say it. No lies, just bullshit.
Who said liar? I said bullshit artist. And what's the difference? Because I don't lie. Never.
Hello and welcome to No Lies Just Bullshit. I'm your host, Nick Swartz, and this is the #1 tattoo storytelling podcast on planet Earth. Thank you for tuning in. Before we get into this week's episode, I want to go over a couple of things. First and foremost, AllianceTattooSupply.com. You got to head over there and get everything you need to run your tattoo shop. They have table drapes, they have power supplies, they have machines, they have lineage needles, they have thermofax paper. You name it, whatever you need to run your joint, head over there. They've got it for you. I forgot to mention this in the past. They're selling the Josh Brown line drawing book, which is a fucking gem. You know, one of the things that's so dope about Josh's book is that, you know, a lot of the stuff in there is stuff that came in off the street. Someone had a common idea, and Josh turned it into a Josh Brown tattoo. And, you know, it takes a real talented tattooer to do that. It's stuff that looks like Josh did it. But it's also like a dream catcher or a feather with some stuff or whatever it may be, and it looks like that person had an original idea and Josh Brown drew it up for him. Even though it's a common idea, he made it look like a tattooer came up with it to begin with, which is something that not everyone can do. So AllianceTattooSupply.com. Go over there. I mean, I'm for real. Do yourself a favor and get a copy of the Josh Brown line drawing book. Support Josh, support Alliance, support No Lies Just Bullshit. Yeah, that's the spot, and those are the folks, and they're good to us, and, you know, we just want to encourage you guys to support them. They're always supporting us, and we appreciate that. So, August, Pagoda 10-year anniversary. The last one, guys. The last one. So, if you're in driving distance and you think you can make it, I suggest you get off your ass and make it, because I'm shutting down Alley Cat. I'm bringing my whole crew. And Richie, even though Richie's not going to be here, I don't know if you all saw the announcement, but Richie's leaving us and heading to Pittsburgh. But I think he's going to try to come through and kick it with us. And we got some friends coming, and our guy Avery, who's been producing the new Shop Talk stuff, he's going to roll up with us and get some footage, and it's going to be ill. It's going to be real ill. And I think everyone's going to put on because it's the last one. So I'm real excited about it. It's going to be the one. I'm real excited to take the team up there because we weren't able to do it last year because of the move, but we're going for it this year. August 1st, 2nd, and 3rd. Okay, so that's sooner than you think. August 1st, 2nd, and 3rd. You want to be there. You really want to be there. Also, Norfolk. Norfolk's coming up, and that's in October, I believe. And let me get you the dates for that as well, just so. Norfolk Tattoo Expo this year, November 6th through the 9th. The 6th through the 9th, Thursday, I think, is just going to be a hang day. When I say the 6th, I'm pretty sure that's a Thursday. So that's a day for artists to kick it, hang out, and everyone get tuned in and get acquainted, all that stuff. And you know, it's a good one. I'm going to go over some more stuff later, but those are the two big ones that are coming up. Excited about that. I'm trying to think. I know we got, like, if you're a regular, we have Maddie from Key City is going to be here. Maddie Goldstein is going to be here the 12th and 13th in Alley Cat Tattoo. Cone Myers is going to be here the 15th to the 18th. And the 15th to the 17th, I think. And then, let me see here. That's it for now. All right. So, anyway, this week's episode is sort of an introduction to these memoirs that I recorded a few years back and play a snippet for you. I'm hoping you guys will DM me and give me some feedback on that. And I'm going to go over a couple other things. So here we go.
Come on, go with me, babe. Come on, go with me, girl. Baby, let's go to the cabin down below. soft and low. Baby, let's go to the cabin down below.
Alright, so welcome to Elijah's Bullshit. So this is not a regular episode. This is a sort of an infomercial, informational type situation. Because actually the day it's dropping is my birthday. I've had a ton going on lately. Motherfucker hit my truck and totaled it. My kids are getting out of school and getting ready to go on vacation without us, and so we're excited about that. We've been trying to get ready. I've had some guests here. I've had shit going on. I got Richie leaving. I got a big project I'm working on with fucking 30 tattooers and lot going on. But I'm gonna play a snippet for you. If you're a regular listener, this is not, it's I think 10, 12 minutes, something like that. So right before the pandemic and during the pandemic, so it's been about 4 years ago, I sat down and recorded, well, first of all, I started doing this podcast because people encouraged me to share my stories. I have lots of stories. I'm fortunate to have a pretty good memory. I know I'm not 100% accurate 100% of the time, but 60% of the time my memory works every time. So, so I started telling stories, and then, I realized that the whole story is something that is something I want to share, and something that I want to touch on if people are interested. So I sat down, I recorded it. I don't know. I thought, it's over 10 hours of stuff, but being edited, it'll get cut back and so on. But it's basically like from my earliest memories up to getting into the tattoo business. And I'm not saying I'm not going to do that part, but that's when motherfuckers start getting sensitive and motherfuckers start getting weird. I mean, I have family members who I recorded these things about, and I had one relationship with them, and our relationship has since changed for the better or for the worst. And so I said what I said, and that's just the way it was. But, I might have had a certain feeling about someone, but then those things have been repaired, but that doesn't really change the reality of the stories I told. And that's just life sometimes, you know what I mean? So I'm basically submitting this to you all because I feel like we kind of have an intimate relationship to some extent. If you're a regular listener and you've been for a long time, I think we put our first podcast out in October of 2016, which is wild, which means we're approaching 10 years, which I can't even fucking believe. But I feel like I have like a relationship with a lot of you folks, and I feel like a lot of you folks feel like that when you tune in, that I'm sitting in the passenger seat of your car, or I'm hanging out in the drawing room while you're painting, or that I'm in the kitchen while you're cooking, or whatever the case may be. Like, I feel like a lot of people, when they DM me or when they reach out, they talk to me as if they really know me. And so this is just to sort of see if that portion of the audience is interested in these stories, the whole story, so to speak. So what I'm about to play for you now is a snippet from like my early years in Clifton Forge. I handed all these recordings over to my dear friend, and he has gone through and edited it, and he's sort of made it sound like almost like a show or like a narration, and so he's added like some sounds and some stuff to sort of make it sound like an NPR type show or something like that. So here it is. This is a snippet from my memoirs. Give it an honest listen, and like I said, if you're somebody who I already correspond with on Instagram or something like that, reach out and give me your thoughts. And if you're somebody who doesn't normally correspond with me but is interested, good or bad, reach out and give me your thoughts. So here you go.
But yeah, so Clifton Forge was the type of place that it had all types, you know what I mean? It had people with a little bit of money. It had people with a little bit of nothing. And we were just in the middle, We had a 3-bedroom house, 2-story, very nice yard, fenced in the back, big garage. I remember in the front there was like a little cut-in in the curb for someone to park their car in front of our house, for the owner to park his car in front of the house. And there was only 2 of those on the whole block. Our house had 1 of them. And so yeah, man, that's where, I started to form my memories, and my brother and I shared a room for, the short time that we lived in that house. But it was a completely different, feel. It was not an apartment building. It was not, and when I would walk out of that apartment building in Kentucky, I would see a parking lot and then just a cliff, just a dirt hillside. And here, when I walked out of this house in Clifton Forge, I would see this old man, Dempsey Bostic, who was my neighbor, watering his lawn or washing his car, tending, to his trees, pruning his trees. I would see kids moving up and down the block. I would see, there was a fair amount of traffic. There was, it was just it just had a different feel. It felt more like a home to me. Of course, I was young. Like I said, I was 4 when I moved there. And I think I only lived there for about 18 months, maybe 2 years, before my mother and father divorced. But during that time, like I said, I shared a room with my brother, and I spent most of my time with my brother. We did everything together. And we played with our cars, we played with He-Man, we played with G.I. Joes together. We were in the yard doing, building volcanoes with vinegar and baking soda. We were, just running around. In that town, when I was a boy, you could get on your bike and you could cruise a couple miles, and you'd be at one end of town or the other. Like it's a beautiful place. I didn't appreciate the beauty of it back then, but I definitely do now when I go back. So yeah, after about 2 years or 18 months maybe of really, really sliding into this neighborhood, I started kindergarten. Our next door neighbors were Dempsey and Karen Bostic, and Dempsey was a bit older than Karen. They were married, and they had a daughter, Valita. But he was the best. He used to smoke Salem, extra long Salem cigarettes. And he would come outside to smoke one at night. And, if it was around Halloween, he would make ghost sounds outside our window. If it was around Christmas, he would make jingle bell sounds or Santa Claus sounds, and then the next day, we didn't know it was him, and he would say, Did you hear those bells last night? I think Santa Claus might have been right. He was fun-loving, and he had an imagination, and he was good to me. And I learned as I got older, that was not only his nature, but he thought it his duty, because Jeff was not good to me, and Jeff was not good to my mother, and Jeff was not good to my brother. So Dempsey would help fill a void. My parents bought me a bike, and I didn't know how to ride it, and Jeff never took a fucking second to try to help me with it. But Dempsey taught me to ride a bike because he knew Jeff was a no-count motherfucker, and he wasn't going to do it. Taught me how to mow the lawn as I got older. Taught me how to wash a car, how to do it properly. He always took good care of his things. I was a young teenager when he died, probably 15, and he had some complications with his heart. I don't really know what it was, and had been hospitalized briefly, and then he was, I think he was heading to the store. I don't know what he was doing, but he was just cruising down the lane, driving down Ridgeway Street in Clifton Forge. That's what it was. And he had a heart attack behind the wheel and veered off the road, and his car actually, ran into a house. I don't think anyone in the house was harmed, but that he died. That's the way he died. Dempsey's wife, Karen, who's still in my family's life, all these years later. I was 4 when I met that woman. I'm 42 now. And her and my mother still talk. My sister calls her Mama. But she took me in the woods all the time as a boy. When there was turmoil in our home, I would just walk outside because I didn't want to listen to it. I didn't want to hear it. I didn't want to experience it. And she would see me, and she would bring me over and sit me down. She was an amazing cook. She made everything from scratch: jelly, jams, pies, breads. She cooked meals every fucking day. And so she would see me and just wave me in her house, and I would come inside, and she'd have a warm pecan pie she just made. My favorite was blackberry pie. She would take me in the woods. We would pick blackberries. We would get enough for her to make a pie, and she would come home and make a pie, and it was the greatest thing ever to me. But she was the first person told me to slow down enough to appreciate the beauty of something. She loved wildflowers, and she loved to go into the woods, and she loved to just be in nature. She wanted to go to the creek. She wanted to walk through the mountains. She wanted to look at, because she was a naturalist of sorts, so she could identify everything in the woods, and she would teach me these things. But I never remember the level of excitement that she would get when she would see a lady slipper. A lady slipper is a wildflower, but they grow under very specific conditions, and some are blue, and some are pink, and some are purple, and some are yellow. And when she would see one, she would put her hand for me to stop. I would usually be a little bit behind her on the trail, usually, and she would put her hand out for me to stop, and she would say, and then wave me in gently, and slowly we would lower to the ground, and she would move the weeds or the bushes or the leaves or whatever was around away from this wildflower, this lady slipper. And she would say, "Look at this, Nicholas," and she, it was something that just was important to her, and she urged me to take it in and enjoy it simply because it's beautiful, and that stuck with me my whole life. I feel like your quality of life can be improved by looking at beautiful cars, beautiful women, beautiful animals, beautiful flowers, beautiful settings in nature. I love old houses and architecture, and beautiful old homes. I think that you can improve the quality of your life just by looking upon these things and taking them in. And I learned that from her, and it sticks with me today. So, my relationship with her was just as wholesome and as pure as you can imagine. Her taking the time to spend with me when things in my house weren't always nice made a huge impact. And in particular, her telling me to slow down and look at something to take in its beauty, just was tremendous for me. Before I forget, another one of the things that she used to make was violet jelly. And we would collect thousands of violets. We would go out in the woods, and these tiny little purple flowers, we would collect thousands of them, and she would turn them into jelly. And it was just, in my mind, it's still one of the most delicious things. I can taste it right now on a biscuit or on an English muffin the way she would give it to me. But yeah, that relationship made a huge impact on my life, and I'm grateful for it. And when I think about Karen, I think about Dempsey. I have nothing but fond memories. But yeah, as far as living at 631 Commercial Avenue, their friendship and kindness made a tremendous impact on me, and I'll never forget it.
All right, so that was a portion of a story from my childhood, and my brother and I have shared a lot. I hear, man, the Florida story never dies. People revisit that. I recently joined the Elks Club in the town I grew up in, Clifton Forge, and someone was asking me about my real dad, so I was reluctant, but they sort of knew that he was a wild man. And so I started telling the story, and there was another gentleman in his 70s there, and he was like, "Hey, man, my doctor told me that story, and he said he heard it on a podcast." So it's got a life of its own. But anyway, lots of stories, coming down the pipe, or we've got to figure out a way to deliver these memoirs if y'all are into it. Moving on. The first thing I want to talk about is sort of the year. So April of last year, February of last year, I was driving up the street from Alley Cat Tattoo, and I saw a for sale sign in a brick building that's a quarter mile up from our shop. And I think it was a Sunday. It might have been a Saturday, but I think it was a Sunday. I pull over, I get the information, I immediately email the realtor. Turns out the sign had gone in that morning. And I reached out and I said, I want to see everything I can about this building, its history, it's, everything that you would see on a listing. And he's like, yeah, well, it just went on the market. I don't have all that information as of right now, but I'll get it to you as soon as I can. I reach out to my realtor, he's out of town. And so I'm just sort of waiting. I get the maybe 2 days later, I get photos and I get the specs, the size of the building, and all that stuff. And, you know, being a quarter mile up from us, it's sort of the only place that's in our neighborhood that could really accommodate Alley Cat Tattoo. It's much, much bigger, and the parking lot is much bigger, and it's got an overflow parking lot. But more importantly, the building's only 30 years old. The building we're in down the street, I think, was erected in the 20s or 30s. It's a fucking skeleton. It's a dump. I loved it, and I loved all the memories that came with it, and all the beautiful tattoos, and all the history, and we had both sides of that building. So on one side was Alley Cat Tattoo, and on the other side for many years was a barbershop, hair salon, and then I took it over and recorded, at least 100, probably more podcasts in that space. Shane Inholm performed in that space. Wayne Hancock performed in that space. Dan Higgs performed in that space. Morgan Wade performed in that space. John Moreland, Scott Bauer. I mean, bunch of great entertainers and friends of ours, and we hosted amazing people, and we had the 20th anniversary there, and all great memories, and just a legacy that I'm very, very proud of. But the building itself was just fucked up, and it was crumbling, and it wasn't. It was no longer serving us well, and but the bummer was when you leave a place like that, you sort of relinquish a certain grittiness that a tattoo shop carries when it's existed for over 20 years in a place that's already kind of shitty. And so I didn't like relinquishing that. But, I owe it to my crew and to myself to elevate and to expand into a space that's more breathable and more comfortable for them and more accommodating to our clients. Everybody hated our fucking parking lot down the street. I mean, everybody hated it. And so, I had people tell me they don't come to Alley Cat because of the parking lot. So, it's a motherfucker. So, anyway, as soon as I saw this opportunity, I jumped on it. And when you have a big crew like I do, it's not huge. It's not Eastman and Rogers, but it's 10 folks. You never know how they're going to act across the board. You never know how they're going to feel as a whole. Like, some of them are going to be for it, some of them are going to be against it, some are going to be comfortable, some are going to be uncomfortable. But fortunately, everyone I have is veterans of tattooing, not just veterans of Alley Cat. Most of them were, but Brian Tiger, was fairly new, and I think Jake had been with us maybe 3 years at that point, 4 years maybe. So anyway, I talked to my realtor. I make arrangements. I bring my brother, Andrew, and Sarah up here to walk through the building. And the gentleman who is selling the building is in here. He's a 6'7" fella, older man in his 70s, gentle by nature, nice fella. He's a physical therapist, and he's been operating this building for 30 years. And, he's like pretty devout Christian, and we're not exactly his cup of tea, but he knows that we've been in this neighborhood for 30 years. And so, he's been in the neighborhood for 30. He knows we've been here for over 20. So at the time, we're here at Alley Cat for 23 years. And he likes the idea of us taking over this space. And he has late stage lung cancer, and he's really trying to get this thing done so that his wife doesn't have to think about it. And his name's Jim, and he's just a hell of a guy. And so he showed us around, and there's some furniture here. It's a physical therapy spot, so there's massage tables that we could use. There's benches and stuff and other stuff like that. And he's just like, yeah, a lot of stuff you're interested in, I'll leave it behind. Just tremendous guy, tremendous character. And we also, I'm not going to go all the way into it, but we also had to apply for a special use permit from the city, go to the zoning commission, apply and pay $500 to request the license, then go in front of the zoning board, which is televised, ask permission, they get a vote, then once they approve it, you got to go in front of the city council and the mayor, and that's televised, and that's another level of application you have to pay for. And and because Jim owned the building at the time, the special use permit had to go into his name, and that's, he's not a tattoo guy. So on and so forth. So this man's undergoing cancer treatment, and all these meetings that we're required to go to, he's not, but he comes to every single one of them. just showing us support and being a great guy. And so I make an offer on the building, which is, he had it for a certain price. I came under that price, and also with the contingency that we have to get approved by the city at 3 levels, special use permit, zoning, and town council, city council. And he agrees to the price and the condition that, if we get approved on all those things, then we'll go forward. Incredible guy. We remained in contact, afterwards. Good family. Turns out we have mutual friends. Have you ever heard of episodes with Uncle Dave? Uncle Dave's wife, Miss Irma, and Jim's wife, Sharon, had breast cancer together and went through treatments together. Just a history, And good folks. And we were able to get everything in order. And then I got to put a date on when we close Alley Cat, when we open here, or when we close at 990, when we open at 220. And I got to figure that out I just have to pull the trigger on, this is the day. And so in the meantime, this whole building is carpeted. So it's concrete floor with tile glued to that and then carpet glued to the tile. It's a fucking nightmare. My brother and I spent 10 hours working on it one day and got about a 2.5 foot wide by about an 8 foot strip completely down to concrete. And so we realized we had to bring in professionals. As soon as you finish that, as soon as they were finished removing that, they polish it. Then Andrew comes in. He's like, how many days can I have? I give him 5 days. He paints the floor, dragons and a big Alley Cat logo, water crashing and rocks and clouds and fucking dragons. And then he specializes a space for Kate, specializes a space for Sarah. Amazing. I said, how are you going to do it, Connor? He goes, I'm going to sit on my skateboard and draw it on, and then I'm going to tie a paintbrush to a broom handle and paint it like that. And I was just like, whatever you say, dog. And, he's like neglecting himself. I'm bringing fucking Waffle House fucking fries and shit. Anyway, or not fries, hash brown. Anyway, he gets that done, and as soon as he's done, I bring the floor guys back in to pour a resin. And then as soon as that's done, I bring in a good friend, Alex Lee, who's been on the podcast a couple times. He comes, frames up the walls that have to be built. There's 2 full walls and some 3/4 walls. And then as soon as he finishes framing that up, drywall goes up. As soon as that's done, paint gets done. And then as soon as that's done, we start hanging flash and trying to get this shit rolling and try to, be thoughtful about the aesthetic of how we want it to look and how we want to present it to the public and to our peers that are going to come here and visit, and the tattooers that are going to come here and do spots. And a lot of pressure and a time crunch. So we closed on the building in second week of April, and I just tell everybody we're opening July 1st. So the floor guys took the rest of April. Andy took the first week of May. So we've got 3 weeks of May and June to do everything else. I gotta have the building painted. I gotta have the fucking parking lot repaired and sealed. It's logistics. It's crazy. If you've ever done a big project like that, logistics are crazy. Just to try to get everything to fall in line, And so yeah, we get that done, and we get that done. And it's kind of loose and it's kind of stressful, but July 1st hits and we're tattooing in here and piercing in here. And, I start recording podcasts. I'm trying to remember who the first podcast I recorded in here with, but I recorded it in my office, I think. I could be wrong. I don't know. I don't remember. There's so many of them. And yeah, so just the ball gets rolling. You know what I'm saying? The ball gets rolling. And then Tim Lehigh has visited a couple times. And then, I'm trying to figure out how I'm going to present this building. And it was a multicolored brick building. I painted the whole thing black. And I was like, man, I was going to do some howdy type letters, some rope letters that said Alley Cat Tattoo on the side facing the street out here. And I was like, nah. And then I got my hands on the Tim Lehigh Tiger book. There's a Picayune inspired forward facing flying tiger that's just screaming. And I was like, yo, Tim, can you draw a version of this to fit this wall with Alley Cat Tattoo and Chopstick? And he's like, yes, I can. And this motherfucker, who's, arguably one of the greatest tattooers that ever lived, a genius and just somebody who we're so proud to be affiliated with. He's my friend, man. We talk about blues records. I'll never forget the second time he visited. He was taking a break between clients, and he comes into my office and he sits down in a chair across from me. He puts his head against the wall. And he goes, "It's so much easier coming here to work knowing that you're into the blues." And we just talked about blues, and we always do. And so, he's a genius, and he agrees to do this thing. So then I got to find someone to paint it. And if you're a regular listener to the show, now you're familiar with my buddy Dalton, who is a sign painter and muralist out of Richmond. Gets tattooed. He's got tattooed by Mike Wilson here. And, that sort of like set the groundwork. We realized what a solid guy he was. And we start talking to him about this project. And he becomes obsessed. He moves into the building. We're so fortunate about the space we have. We have a little suite. We have a little shower, locker room situation. We have a small kitchen. And so he moves in. And he comes up and he just starts working on this thing tirelessly for about 7 days. And so the point I'm trying to make is like, it takes time and it takes everyone cooperating, you know what I mean? Because everyone here at Alley Cat Tattoo had to accommodate him in some way or another. Like we're helping him get, because you got to put a projection onto the building, and then you can only do half at a time. So then you got to flip it and do the other half, and it's got to be perfectly symmetric. And it takes hours to line this motherfucker up, and then you got to get it all kind of lined in before you can take the projection out. Start painting. My brother came up here and helped him block everything in, and just unbelievable, man. Unbelievable dude, unbelievable process. But I'm so gassed, and everyone comes here, their minds are blown, and it's just fucking, it's always so exciting. Every time I see it, I'm excited and blown away, and people bring it up to me constantly, and people come and have their photograph taken. This thing's 9 feet tall and 43 feet wide. People come and get their picture taken next to it. And then Trevor, that's kind of a cream color, the mural on black. And then Trevor comes up and he paints some like old Zeiss designs on the front of the building. There's a Sacred Heart, a sparrow, and a dagger with our logo. And man, with our address. And it's starting to feel more and more and more like our spot, And then my buddy Jacob, who's another sign painter, he's a map maker down in Richmond. He paints me a sign for the lot across the street, some chopstick letters, super dope, and get that installed. That's coming along, man. It's coming along. It's feeling more and more. We're just constantly hanging more stuff up, and we've got a ton of stuff in storage, and we're trying to get it going. And finally, kind of things start settling down a little bit, and here it's Christmas time, and so we have a Christmas party. And there's this kid I met. It's a weird story. I met him at Jersey Mike's. He was running the Jersey Mike's in town. And he would always ask me, his name was Seth, he would always say, Nick, I noticed you got custom Air Force Ones on. How you get them done? Where do you get your sneakers? Where do you get this? Now, how long you been in the tattoo business? How do you know what kind of, what kind of tattoos do you like? How do you go about hiring? Just always asking me a ton of questions. Basically, he's trying to get game. He's a young guy and he wants to just learn game. And so, how about your chain? Is that custom medallion? Who does that for you? Can you link me with them? All this stuff. And so, he's gets out of the sandwich business and he puts on a fashion show. And he tells me, hey, I want you to be there. I want you to be in the VIP. I'm going to comp everything for you. And I'm thinking this is going to be some fucking, at a VFW, some fucking assembly hall. Weird. It's at a dope space with a dope sound system and a dope DJ. And I take my wife and my daughter and they fucking love it. And he just sort of solidified our friendship a little bit, man. And I could see that he was about his shit and he was doing his thing. And so then I meet one of his partners. Actually, we had a Christmas party here, and so I invited him. He brought a couple of his buddies. One of them is his business partner, this kid Avery. And Avery comes and hangs out. It's a Christmas party, so we're getting loose. We're having a good time. There's food, there's drink, there's smoke, whatever. And I'm in the back twisting one, and a couple of homies come back here, and Avery's just like, man, I can't believe how much space you have and how unique all these spaces look. It's fucking dope in here. And he was like, man, you could do this and you could do that. He starts telling me all this stuff. So I was like, why don't we just have lunch? So we go to Bella Luna, local joint that I love, that my buddy runs and another friend owns. My buddy's a chef there. And we have lunch, and he's like, so, what you really need to do is put No Lies Just Bullshit on YouTube. Streams is where it's at. You got this, you got that, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, yeah, I don't want to do that. And he's like, yeah, but you need to step up your whole game. Your website is non-existent. Your audio is trash. People can hear you grinding up weed, all this other stuff. And I'm like, yeah, I know, and that's why I like it, and I'm not touching it. He's like, yeah, but this needs to happen, and that needs to happen, and streams and all this shit. And I'm like, yo, dog, I'm not going to have Rich Fi and Big George or Richie Montgomery or Corey Miller or some of these motherfuckers that I've had on here. I'm not going to try to set them up in front of a camera. They're going to be different guys. I'm going to be a different guy on a camera. I'm not fucking with No Lies Just Bullshit. I'm not fucking with it. And so he's like, so that's it. You're just not going to, you don't want to do it. You don't want to do anything. And I was like, I'm not saying I don't want to do anything, but I don't want to do that. I'm not fucking with No Lies Just Bullshit. It is what it is. I was like, you know what, man? We used to have this thing called Shop Talk. It was kind of a segment we did on No Lies Just Bullshit. It was me and Andy and Porter, and we would pull up these tattoos and talk about how great they were. We weren't into critiquing anybody. We were just into talking about, how dope the tattoos were, what made them dope and what we liked about them. And, nothing but positivity. And it was called Shop Talk, and I explained how it worked. He was like, man, Nick, that's the show. He was like, you have that idea already and you've executed it and it has a great name. He was like, that's what you do. You add visuals to that. It's where you guys are looking at the image and we'll put it on the screen while you guys are talking about it. That's perfect. I was like, yeah, but Andrew ain't gonna do that. And he's just like, oh man, that would have been perfect. I go, I'll ask him, but I don't think he'll do it. So, a couple days pass. I run into Andrew at work, and I'm like, hey, you got a minute? I'm talking to you about something. And I kind of like, explain to him the whole process of that conversation with Avery. And he's like, yeah, sounds like fun. Let's get the band back together. And I was like, no way. Like, I couldn't believe he was just so casually down to do it, to be on camera. I just didn't think he'd want to be on camera. And I was like, all right. And I kind of felt like Porter would do it, no problem. And so Porter immediately hops on board and he's down to do it. And so we're just like, fuck yeah, we're going to do it. Talk to Avery, kind of figured out some lights and figured out a space and a backdrop and all this other stuff. And so if you haven't checked that out, that's our new, that's the new show, the new YouTube show. It's called Shop Talk. It's on the No Lies Just BS YouTube page. You got to head over there and fucking like and subscribe, please. And it's being really well received and people seem to dig it a whole lot. I think we put out 10 episodes. We're dropping one I guess when this comes out, it will have been last Wednesday. And it's different. It's not tattoo talk. It's music talk. It's me and Justin Weatherholtz talk about rock and roll music. And it's a lot of fun. And it's sort of, sometimes I get sort of this idea that something that has to be rigid in the way it is. And the truth is, if it's mine and I call it Shop Talk and I made it up and it fucking belongs to me, then I can do whatever the fuck I want. And we're just talking shop about music. And I could talk shop about fucking digging graves or fucking, I could talk shop about making liquor or whatever I wanted to do. I could do any of it if someone knows what's up. And so that's what the most recent one was. And so I spend the next couple months, like from Christmas forward, recording some of these joints. And then next thing I know, man, it's just like sort of snowballing into like springtime. I got a ton of tattooers, like Justin Weatherholtz, like I just mentioned. He flies down and hangs out, and then he leaves, and Chad Chesko shows up, and he leaves, and Mike Wilson shows up, and he leaves. Timothy Hoyer and Tim Lehigh show up together, and then they leave, and then Jay Rano's here, and he rolls out. Chad Chesko's back, and then fucking next thing you know, it's like Timothy and Mike are here again, and just like tons of great tattooers, tons of good times. Holly Setzer came down, worked, and did a podcast, and a handful. Julio Alvia flew in from fucking Minnesota or some shit, and fucking he did one. You know, he did a great episode. He's got a great book out. My son just read it. Yeah. So anyway, just kind of giving you the year and the pace at which it's moved. It's been kind of crazy, and it's all at a time where. And this is kind of the point too. And this is all just me. I've always wanted to do an episode like this where I'm just giving you a stream of consciousness, or I'm just talking to you about everything I want to talk about. But this year marks Andrew Connor's 30th year tattooing, and it's a big deal. And so this is coming out. If you're listening to this the day it comes out, it's Tuesday, June 10th. It's my birthday. I'm 47 years old today, and we're going to celebrate. You know, my birthday, but I'm gonna hang with the crew, and I want to talk about Andrew's 30th year. So, Andrew, you know, he doesn't really like to talk about dates and anniversaries and his age or his birthday or what's going on with personal stuff. He's just never been that kind of guy. All I know is when I met him, I was 15 probably, and he was tattooing my homies at Ancient Art, and he was already tattooing. I was 15. I would say he was probably 18, maybe 19, but it was 30 fucking years ago. So, and that would have been probably 1994 when I first started rolling into Ancient Art. Danny Fowler's Ancient Art on 220, south side of Roanoke. Andrew was already there. My pal Mark Bell was there. Troy Herstein was there. Eddie Geary was there. Mark Green. That might have been. That was the bulk of the roster, I'm pretty sure. It might have been somebody else there, but anyway, that was like the meat and potatoes. And Andrew had chops and a big pompadour, and he tattooed with fucking creepers on and slacks and suspenders, thin suspenders, and a real thin, like a white shirt and thin black tie, and like a rubber apron, you know what I mean? And he was like rockabilly style tattooer, you know what I mean? And for such a young guy to have that greaser look and that confidence in doing it, you know, where I come from, like we're always trying to like fit in. And this stood out. This is way different than anybody, but it was his flavor, and he looked sharp, and you know, women loved it, and dudes were like impressed with it, and he was just a fucking man, and he could draw his fucking ass off, and he could, you know, there was just something about him, man. He was charismatic. He tattooed my homies, and then, so I got my first tattoo on my birthday, June 10th, 1996, and he was there, but he didn't have time to tattoo me, but he drew up the design for Eddie Geary, and Eddie tattooed me. And I had these big old fucking, you know, lineman, right guard fucking arms, and I wanted a tribal armband. He drew it, but I could only afford to get half of it because the whole thing was going to be fucking $450 or something. So he draws half of it, and Eddie does it on me for $180. And I couldn't be more excited. Back in those days, they told us to use Noxzema on the motherfucker. So I was getting home, I was caking it with Noxzema like a prick. And then, as soon as it healed, I went to Germany with it, and then when I came, obviously, I went everywhere the rest of my life with it. But when I came back from Germany, I had a little more bread, and I went back, and Andrew just said, I'll just lay down, I'll draw it on. And so he just looked at the outside, drew the inside on, charged me $160 to finish it. And this is 1996. These motherfuckers were hitting me upside the head, yo. But like I said, I had these fucking, you know, right tackle fucking arms. And so yeah, man, you know, I just wanted to be around him, man. He was, like I said, he was a slick looking dude. He was cool. He was charming. The next time I saw him, I don't know when it was, but it was probably later that year, 96. He had his neck tattooed. I was like, oh shit, this motherfucker's wild. You know, getting your neck tattooed in 1996 was some next level shit. You just weren't out here getting your neck tattooed. It just wasn't a good move. And but he was so dedicated to the game that he didn't give a fuck. He got his neck tattooed. Then I hear from one of the fellas he moved to North Carolina. I go down there, I see him. He's working at Blue Flame, he's working at Abraxas, he's working at Tattoo and Skate Asylum, different joints when I go down different times. And we're still not like super tight, but we're cool. And I'm just sort of adjacent to his friend group and shit. or because he's gone. He comes back for a little bit. Mark Bell and everyone bounces from H&R because Danny put an injunction on everybody, or had them all in these no-compete bullshit contracts. And Andrew comes back for a little bit, then he goes to Los Angeles. Then he comes back from Los Angeles. By that time, I'm married and living in Roanoke, and he brings a woman back with him. And Annie Lane, or Annie, I don't know, I guess what, Hololob, I think was her maiden name. Anyway, she and my wife become friends. Me and Andy are kicking it. He starts we schedule some times for him to tattoo homies, like house party kind of shit. We're still young, man. I mean, I'm barely 21, if that. And we just start kicking it more and more and more and more and more. And he's tattooing wherever he can, but he don't really want to play by the rules. He's got this underground tattoo shop underneath a doctor's office. It was cool as fuck, man. I was, in a bar or something. I was talking about I wanted to get a tattoo from a pinup girl from Joe Capobianca, and he's just like, because that was the flavor back then. He's like, yeah, I do a pinup girl. And you're like, Joe, there's no problem, He's like, here's my address. If you're serious about it, come by this day. So I roll down there, and I got 2 40s and 2 blunts with me, and I go in the basement of this doctor's office, this brick building. And I'll never forget, I had to park a little ways away on the street and then walk through this huge yard, but there was no sidewalk. Because it was like a side entrance. Like, you weren't really supposed to walk up that way. I go down this flight of stairs and I go inside the coolest space I'd ever fucking been in, man. He had like the leg lamp, like the I don't know what it was from, but it was maybe, I don't know, Bowski. Anyway, it was like a lady's leg, and the top was a lamp, and it had a lampshade around it with fucking tassels and shit. And he had a bench that looked like an old car, and he had just cool fucking ashtrays everywhere, and playing like records and had just shit was just fly. And I was like, yo, you mind if I fire one up? He said, I'll do anything you want, man. So I'm firing one up, and I'm burning one, and he's got this drawing for me, and I'm like, yeah, and at the time I was kind of annoying. I was just kind of a loud mouth, and I wanted things the way I wanted. I was like, yeah, whatever, put a position however you want, but I got to be able to make her titties bounce, you know what I mean? I got to be able to like move my fingers and make that part of my arm. Kind of like when Popeye, or on the Popeye cartoons, when he would flex his bicep and the fucking flag would wave kind of thing. And we had a laugh about that. Threw on some Wayne Hancock records, man, and that I feel like that really solidified our friendship, and so within a year of then, me and my wife split, him and his girl split, and our buddy Troy is opening Alley Cat Tattoo in Harrisonburg, and I'm working for Troy making body jewelry at Captain B Company at a warehouse in Roanoke. Our friend Scott is in the process of teaching me how to do body piercing. So I'm doing all this shit. Actually, I had been learning that for a while, and but I didn't have a whole lot of opportunities to work. Mark Bell would let me cover a shift occasionally at Urban Tribe. Grizz was starting to let me work over at Skin Throws a little bit. I was just picking up stuff whenever I could pick up stuff. That's just the way I went. So it's opening weekend. I'm like trying to get Andrew to commit coming up here, and he's just like, you know what? I'll do opening weekend. Like, it's probably going to be some buzz. It's probably going to be busy. I'll come up there and I'll do some tattooing. And that's all I'm committed to. So we did that. And then it sort of became, as I wanted to come back often, but the guy who taught me, Scott, he had like a full schedule. He had like the Tuesday through Saturday. So I was working Sunday, Monday, but if Scott needed coverage, I wanted to cover it. And I wanted Andrew to just come with me on Sundays and Mondays. And so I just made it my full-time job to try to get him to come up here with me. Anytime I was coming, I just wanted him to come. Sometimes he'd come, sometimes he wouldn't. And then Scott and the owners had a falling out, and they're like, yo, we don't know what to do. And I was like, well, I'll take Scott's position because I want to fucking work. And I want to get the fuck out of Roanoke. I don't want to be around these shops that squabble and they talk shit and they're just everyone hating on each other. And I don't want to be, I'm done with it. And so I go, Connor, me and Julie split, you and Annie split, let's get the fuck out, let's go up here, there's new opportunities, let's go up here and get some bread. And eventually, I talked him into it. We came up here with nothing, and not even our shit, because we didn't have no bread really, and we moved into Motel 6 when we could afford it, be me and Andrew and my dog Chopper. And then when we couldn't afford it, you know, if I couldn't find any young lady to take mercy on me and let me stay at her crib, do some laundry and shit, then we would just stay at the shop, you know. And we would sleep at the shop, but there was no shower or anything there. So you get up in the morning, smoke a couple cigarettes, take turns doing a bird bath, you know, in the shop bathroom, washing your face and hands and brushing your teeth and washing your pits and just kind of getting as clean as you can. And then there was a Hardee's diagonally across the street. And this is like 2002. And at that time in Virginia, you could still smoke in restaurants. And so Hardee's had these little tin, like they looked like they were gold, but they're just little tin ashtrays. McDonald's had them, like a bunch of places had them back in the day. They were basically disposable ashtrays. And me and Andrew would walk over to Hardee's, and you know, he would get just taters because he's vegan, and I would get he would get like, you know, hash browns, and I would get like a biscuit and gravy and a sausage and cheese or whatever the fuck I was getting, and we'd eat. And then he'd drink coffee and I'd drink tea, and we'd sit there and look out the window at Alley Cat, smoke cigarettes for like an hour, and watch people like roll up and try the door and peek in the windows. And we had a bench, and they would start sitting on the bench or sitting in the parking lot, just sort of hanging out, and we would watch like the day sort of start to present itself, you know. And then at like, you know, 5 till, because the shop, we cleaned the shop the night before and everything was ready to go. 5 till, we would walk across the street. It was literally across the street, and go open up for business, you know. And man, it just formed one of the closest bonds and closest friendships of my life. And I'm just so glad that we stuck with one another, and that Andrew, you know, he's 30 years, man. So we're continuing to do this where if we can afford it, we're staying at a motel. I'm staying with some ladies here and there. He's staying at the shop if we don't have a room. He's just also buckling down. Like I'm trying to get the word out. I'm giving out coupons. I'm giving out business cards. Every single time I pay for a tab or a bill, I tip and I put a card. And I'm talking to every door guy, every bartender, every waitress, every, you know, if I see a motherfucker in the mall or walking down the street and they got tattooed, like I'm just talking to everyone. I'm just trying to get it popping. And Andrew is focused on really getting good at laying out paintings and laying out large tattoos, and he's just so fucking focused, man. And so one day, neither one of us had a cell phone. So after we got our day started at the shop, you know, I'd get however many people settled in or set up for a tattoo to come later in that day. Or actually, in those days, they just waited. Or I would pierce whoever needed piercing. And then I'd go across the street and grab a newspaper, and I'd come back and I'd look for apartments and houses, you know, every fucking day. And a couple weeks in, maybe a month in, I don't know, this house comes up for rent, and it's, no joke, a stone's throw from where I'm sitting right now. I'm in the like podcast studio area of the new building that we're in, and I could throw a rock to the yard of the house that me and Andrew ended up moving into. So I find a place, and I go, yo, Connor, he's tattooing. I go, yo, there's a house right up the street that's for rent, and I haven't seen it yet, but I'm gonna go meet the guy at 4:30, and he's like, how close is it? And I tell him, he goes, get it. And I go, I ain't seen it yet, it might be fucked up. And he goes, get it. I go, yeah, well, it's fucking $600 a month plus a deposit, and I didn't have any bread. I mean, I had a little bit of bread, but I didn't have $1,200. He pulls $1,200 out, peels it off, and just like, give me back whatever you can. He goes, I don't have no fucking wheels. I need to be walking distance. Rent the fucking house. And so I was like, all right, dog. So I came up the street. I met this old man who grew up in the house with his 7 brothers and sisters and his parents. His name was Carl Landis. Shouts to Carl. And, you know, I just looked around a little bit. I said, we'll take it. And he was like, okay, well, you know, you got to sign a lease. And what are you doing down the street? What's that tattoo shop all about? He was in his 70s then. And the lease was like one sheet of paper that they had just typed up, like, you know, I'm going to be responsible for this property for a year and blah, blah, blah. The date, I signed it, he signed it. I pull out the $1,200. He's like looking at it. He's like, where'd you get this money? I said, working. He said, working where? I said, "It's a tattoo shop right down the street." He was like, "You mean to tell me you can get $1,200?" I was like, "Yeah, man, you get $1,200 for smell tattoos and piercings and shit." And so, Andrew and I moved into the crib, and again, it just, we went on the road selling his paintings and selling jewelry for Troy and selling flash together. We went to conventions together. We hung out. We got on each other's fucking nerves too. I was a hard motherfucker to deal with. I was bringing people over constantly. I was even having hardcore shows. I was doing, I barbecue every time I got the opportunity to have a day off. I had a barbecue. People coming and going constantly, and Andrew's more private than me. He stuck it out for about a year, maybe 14 months, and then he bounced, and then he bounced from Alley Cat. But he was only gone maybe 7 or 8 months, not even a year, between the time that I took it over. 4 years in, I took it over. He had left, opened his own place downtown, and I took it over from the original owners. And then within a month of that, he hit me up and we met up, and he's been with me ever since under the same agreement that we made then, and that's been over 20 years. And like I said, man, I just couldn't be more grateful for a friend and someone that I've grown with and learned from, and we taught each other lessons over the years, and I'm just proud of him. I'm proud of what he's accomplished. I'm proud of the fact that so many tattooers admire him and what he's capable of doing, and how beautifully he presents the tattoos and paintings that he does. And I just wanted to make sure that I said this. And if I hadn't been so busy and I would have been more responsible, I would have been a real joy to have the crew come in and say something about him. But I just want you all to all know how much we all love and respect Andrew, and he's just a powerful entity of a man and tattooer, and he just he's just done a lot for everybody and inspired so many people. And anyway, I wanted to tell some stories and mention his 30th year. And if you're listening to this, shoot that man a DM, congratulate him on 30. And like I said, it's coming out on my birthday, June 10th, 2025, and we always want to celebrate Andrew and 30 more fucking years, because this motherfucker is he can't be stopped. He cannot be stopped. When a motherfucker comes in and looks at a painting that's hanging in here that he did 5 years ago or did 5 weeks ago, and they look and they go, how the fuck, this is like classic American, and this is crazy like fine line, this looks like it's West Coast Cholo shit, and this looks like, and I'm like, Andrew Connor cannot be stopped. You motherfuckers don't realize who you're dealing with. This motherfucker is a powerful motherfucker, and he cannot be stopped, and he's my brother, and I love him. So this is just a tribute to him, dedicated to him. I want to thank you all for tuning in and listening to me babble today, about all we've had going on and what we got coming up. And if you are so inclined, please send Andrew a message and tell him, congratulations on his 30th, and come see us at Pagoda, come see us at Alley Cat Tattoo, come see us at Norfolk. And if you take the minute, or if you enjoyed the 10 minutes of my memoirs, or however long it was, 8 minutes, whatever it was, or you didn't enjoy it, if you thought it was whack, either way, shoot me a DM or holler at me however you holler at me, and tell me what you thought. And we're coming up on 400 episodes of No Lies Just Bullshit, and I'm proud of what we've done. I'm going to keep the train rolling, and I'm proud of what we're doing with Shop Talk, putting a spotlight on great tattooers. And there's a lot of negativity in the game, and you see a lot of motherfuckers on Instagram just bitching and complaining. Fuck all that. I love tattoos. I love the game. I love my friends and my coworkers and the people that make this thing great. And I'm always going to keep putting out that good shit. And we're going to talk about great tattoos on Shop Talk. And we're going to talk about great tattooers. And anybody who tells you that it ain't dope, they can get the fuck out. And anybody who don't, just like I said before, don't let nobody with a microphone or some fucking camera tell you that tattooing ain't the dopest it's ever been. Because we're all blessed to be here. Thank you. No Lies Just Bullshit. Andrew Connor forever.
And I can sing all them songs about Texas. Ooh. and I still do all the sad ones that I know. I can't help it, I look like Merle Haggard, and I sound a lot like David Allan Coe. But the country DJs all think I'm an outlaw, and they'd never come to see me in this dive, where bikers stare at cowboys who are laughing at the hippies who are praying they'll get out of here alive. The loudmouth in the corner's getting to me, talking about my
No lies, just bullshit.